Feel the energy burning bright. Be seen, be heard, be remembered. Online events bring the world together.
So online events bring the world together, and here we are, different parts of Canada and the US, and we have a fantastic show. Welcome everyone to the storytelling journey. I am your host, or one of your co-hosts, Americo DaCosta, coach and producer of Livestream and on-demand digital experiences. My co-host, Jay Pasqua, joining me this week. Jay, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. Lots of things happening at the nature center, but also some things working in the backgrounds of stuff related to storytelling. So I'm actually anxious about it, but I'm hopeful that it'll turn out pretty good. So
fantastic. Well, you missed a great conversation, but what I'm learning from episode to episode is that each and every one of these are fire. They have a tendency of heating up in a good way. Great engagement, great guests, and great conversations. Our guest today is no other than, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim Fuhs, it's pronounced. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Here, we're going to give you a round of applause. Welcome to the show. How's that?
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, let's knock the confetti off the stage here. And why don't we have you kick us off? Why don't you introduce yourself, share who you are, where you've been, and get us kickstart.
Yeah, all right. So since we're telling some stories, right? I guess I'll go way back. So my mom is Peruvian, and so she came here to the United States in the 60s, met my dad, who was in the Navy at the time, stationed at the Pentagon. And so that's how they connected. So I'm a first generation American. I was actually born in Indianapolis, Indiana. And at the age of 2, we moved to DC area. That's where I grew up. So I'm a huge fan of most Washington sports teams. And my dad, I guess that whole military tradition and family. I mean, I have a uncle that fought in World War I, or I guess actually great uncle. And so I joined the Marines right out of high school, went to boot camp and in the reserves. And then I went to college, got commissioned, and became a Marine officer, and retired 16 years ago as a Marine lieutenant colonel. And then somehow over time, probably about, I guess, 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, I started doing this thing called live streaming, and got into the whole digital marketing thing because outside of being in the military, I don't think sometimes that we grow up saying, oh, when I grow up, I want to work for the government for the rest of my life. So I wanted to have my own business, control my time. And so that's why, I guess that's why I'm here today.
That is awesome. Well, if you haven't heard it enough, you'll hear it one more time. Thank you for your service, my friend.
Well, and as I like to tell people, well, you're worth it. And I appreciate good people like you guys being out there, that we're able to protect your freedoms.
All right. And speaking of people out there, why don't we take a moment to welcome those who are joining us on Team Live, or those who might be catching the replay and catching this on Team Replay. Have questions for Jim, Jay, or myself, drop them in the comments, and we'll be sure to answer them, address them, and talk about it live, or engage in the comments after we are off the air. Now, Jay, you said you're excited about this. You have some stories that you want to start. I know we're here to spotlight Jim, But I'm curious, my friend, what do you got?
Well, there's just a couple of anecdotes related to the Marine Corps. So, you know, if you're a Marine and you studied World War II at any length, you would know several places in the Pacific, such as Guam, right? And right now, Guam is ramping up to actually host Marines again for uh, a long time. Um, there's going to be they're building a base at this very moment to house Marines and their dependent and a whole contingent of other folks. You know, basically to help build up the base and to take care of operations. So anyway, there's a huge history of the Marine Corps on Guam. And you know, when you grow up on an island, it just becomes kind of part of daily life, right? With the military, and so um, I never, you know, I was a dumb kid. Just gonna put that out there. I was a dumb kid. So there's a road that's called Marine Drive, and it's right by the beach. And so for a very long time, I thought it was called Marine Drive because it was by the beach. Not no, not so much. It's called Marine Drive because of the march of Marines during World War II and earlier in that area to be able to secure certain locations. And so then it actually became a thing in the legislature where they said, you know, we got to rename this stretch of road to Marine Corps Drive. And it was actually uh, a movement by a Marine, and he actually walked the entire island. By the way, it's not so large, but he walked the entire island to basically bring attention to the fact that it needed to be changed and to recognize the lives that were lost during World War II in defense of the island and actually to reclaim the island for the United States. And so that's one story of how the Marine Corps is kind of intertwined with the culture and the people of Guam. The other story is a personal one where I was a cub reporter and I went to visit Colonel Scambaluri, right? And Colonel Scambaluri, I wanted to find out, you know, he's a chief of police. Why are they calling him Colonel? You know, I'm not making the correlation here. And so before I went, I just did a little bit of research. And back then, let me show my age, you know, you couldn't just pull it up on your phone. So I had to ask around and talk to people. And they said, well, you know, he served in the Marines. And before he got out, he was given, you know, the honor of colonel and the recognition of being colonel. And so I went, you know, I thought I'd start off the conversation before we went into the story. And I said, hi, my name's Jay. You know, I'm a new reporter at the station down the road. And I understand that you were a Marine. Let me say that again. You were a Marine. And I sat down, right? And he said, I'm going to have to ask you to stand up, sir. I was like, what? Okay. He said, I'm going to, and he stood up and he said, I'm going to shake your hand again. And this time I'm going to tell you, I need to correct you. And I said, what do you mean? He says, once a Marine, always a Marine. And if you say that again to anybody else who's in the Marine Corps, you're gonna get more than just what I'm giving you right now. And I'm like, okay. So, and I was, and you know, He's the chief of police. I don't want to get on his bad side. And so he said, but just for future reference, once a Marine, always a Marine. And then he sat down and he says, now you can have a seat. I was like, gosh. And I was 19 at the time, and this guy, he had a firm handshake. Let me tell you, like crush your knuckles handshake, So anyway, that's my stories. Those are my stories of the Marine Corps in Guam. And so I just wanted to share that. And I know you're an advocate, and I know that marketing, you use the Marine Corps style of marketing. I'm anxious to hear that. So go ahead and talk to me about it.
All right. Well, I got that question parked. There's a lot of questions that I'm hoping Jim can share with us. But before we dive into those questions, it's fascinating that you said it, and anyone who's a veteran will probably support that story. But let's talk about the transition from veteran to marketing. How did that unfold? Talk us through what was the defining moment that sparked this pivot? Because you could have gone into anything.
Yes. In fact, when I first retired, my first couple jobs were as working for defense companies in the contracting space, because part of my background in the Marine Corps was I was a contracting officer. I actually got a master's in acquisition from the Naval Postgraduate School and used to run the largest non-weapon system program in the Marine Corps, which was our pre-positioning program out of Blunt Island. And it's probably about a $500 million contract. But that's not what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I was working in the government space, and then probably about 2015, I kind of ran into these people at an event. And by then I was just doing like government contract consulting at that point. I'd started my own business in 2011, 2012 timeframe. And they're talking about this thing called Facebook, and they're helping people with Facebook, and they're getting paid money for doing it. And I was like, huh. So I start digging into this social media stuff. I mean, I have been on Facebook, but had never thought about it for business. And I was like, well, this doesn't look hard. I was a, double major in business and, have a master's basic. And it's like, not in marketing specifically, but it's like, so you're helping people with a social media platform, in a sense, tell their story, educate people about their business. Well, let me see if I can do this. And so I had been in a networking group and, basically had a couple of businesses that were willing to be the guinea pigs. And so I made that shift because I really wasn't enjoying being in the government contracting space, because one, it's, kind of like what we're seeing right now here in the US. You never know from year to year if you're going to get funded. You could have shutdowns. I mean, yes, the government does pay, but it just wasn't something that got me excited and motivated. And so that was kind of the first step. And then I got to start teaching social media at a couple of community colleges to small businesses. And so I enjoyed doing that. And so as, just kept learning, kept progressing. And then eventually, just like with you, Americo, the live streaming has become a much bigger part of that. So I've gone from being a social media manager type of person to where now it's much more involved with video production and, and how do you help businesses tell their story with video and audio with podcast.
Awesome. So now we're going to segue and bring in the Marine Corps 5.
Yes.
Now, this acronym, am I pronouncing it correct? It's SMEAC?
Yes, you are.
Let's hear about it, because Jay's anxious to hear more about it, and I'm just as anxious to hear how you bring these two worlds and these two dynamics together.
Right. So when you have a conversation with a prospective client, we'll say, by going through this process. So first of all, we say, okay, as an example, Jay, what's the situation of what your business is in? It might be like, well, we're having problems with X, Y, or Z. And then we say, okay, well, the mission, what is it that we're looking to accomplish with what you're doing? And then once I know that mission, we come up with an execution plan of who's going to do what, who's going to be responsible for these different things. Like, because one of the things I think people forget about, or, you as a business owner can't, or you could, I personally wouldn't just delegate to, the company you're hiring, like, hey, take care of my marketing. But the problem is, I don't know your story. I don't know your tone of voice. So I'm going to need you, as part of the execution of us getting your marketing plan going, to provide me with your viewpoint on different things, how you want to act towards different things. And that kind of leads into what I call admin and logistics, which is, what platforms are we going to use? Are we going to have to, pay for certain tools in order to execute these things? And then the C, the command and control, who's going to be responsible for each thing, i.e., I'm going to be responsible for finding you clients to interview, and then, or you're going to be, providing me different things. And so that puts that framework together and allows us to, in some aspects, quickly get to making decisions and adjusting to the real world. Because as we like to say in the military, when the plan hits execution, sometimes things go out the window, and that's why we have to be prepared to adapt and overcome.
Did you take notes, Jay?
He's
Jay,
silent.
Did we lose you?
No, yeah, I'm actually taking a lot of notes, and so I just got to say semper fi to that. And I've heard SMEAC before, and it's we living on an island, right? You're hit with a lot of natural disasters. So one of the things is understanding what SMEAC is, and then cores of readiness, right? I'm in core 1 at the moment. So core 1 is like, it's about ready to hit the, what did you say, mission? So that's what it is at this moment. I think, when you find a system that works for you, and you can take that system and apply it to other parts of your life or work or career, those things are going to help others as well. So once you find that system that works, if it works for you, it's going to work for other people. And so I think that's one of the things that systems do in helping people tell stories. And if you're able to help your clients tell their story based on these systems, then you've already set the ball in motion to have success in that regard. And so I that's the reason I wrote my book, The Rules of, and check this out, it's called The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling.
Love it.
Yeah, so there's rules of engagement on the battlefield, but there's also rules of engagement, right, when you're dealing with your audience. And so to be able to tell your story, you've got to have this system. And so it's 10 points. Let's not overcomplicate it. The other thing you hear in the military a lot is KISS, right?
Yes.
So it's keep it simple.
Jay.
Someone.
There's different variations of the yes, depending on the audience.
Right. So anyway, I just I'm listening to you, and I think, there's a lot of alignment with what we're about when we're trying to help our folks, right? The audience that we serve, or the people that we serve.
Well, and I think, Jay, you bring up something too that people, sometimes forget about, right? The fact that by having processes in place, by understanding that, I think one of the biggest problems that businesses run into is not making a decision, wanting perfect information. You've got to make a decision. You're never going to have perfect information, because if you do, it's probably too late. And so, in the military, when we're on the battlefield, or even if we're in training, we have to make decisions, and we have to be prepared. As the leader, you have to take on the responsibility and not just think that, well, it messed up because, I told Jay to do it and he did it wrong. No, you didn't tell Jay everything he needed to know, or what to do if he ran into a problem. And so as the leader, you take on that responsibility, and it's like, okay, let's learn from what we did wrong so we do it better in the future.
And this is what I love about the format of the show. I tell each of my guests, this is not scripted, it's not rehearsed, but somehow I found, through miraculous means, I find a way to come up with questions that just kind of fit like a puzzle piece. So here we are. You talk about helping those people. So how do you help clients or your community identify that mission and align it with their marketing execution? Because you're right, people, for the most part, marketing is often misunderstood because everyone's chasing a trend of some sort. But it's more than that, and we're seeing it as we jump into this live streaming ecosystem, that there's many ways to define and execute the mission through live streaming. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you align what you do.
Well, I think, it's part of it is having a conversation. And so, as an example, you'll hear people say things like, well, what is it you want to do with your Facebook page? Oh, well, I want to find, people that want to buy, my widget. Well, who are those people? Well, the people on Facebook. No, that's not, you're not targeting, right? You're not getting focused. It's people from age 20 to 40. They potentially have a specific income level. They have a specific hobby. So you have to really dig down and figure out, right? We're not trying to be there for everybody. We have to be there for that specific, demographic. I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to the whole customer avatar thing, right? And if you think of it, if we wanted to equate it to the military, it's like, who's our enemy, right? Who's our allies? And when we identify those things, then we can prepare our battle plan, right? So even from the perspective of, if I'm in a business and I know I have some weak spots, right? The ally would be, I'm going to collaborate with this company or that company because they can provide me those skills that I may not have to be able to support the mission getting accomplished. And I think that's where, it's kind of like people's like, oh, well, there's 20 companies in this shopping center that you could do social media for. I don't want to do everybody's social media. I want to do the social media or help that one company that aligns with my values and that also understands the importance of being, fast, nimble, and ready to shift and adapt. Because personally, I think that businesses that are still focused on Facebook are missing the mark, because if you think about human behavior, most of us don't go to Facebook looking for things to buy. Sure, they throw up a bunch of ads, but I'm more likely to go to YouTube and do a search to find things, and then maybe I'll go find a website. Of course, AI is changing all that, but that goes back to you got to be prepared to shift.
That's
You
right.
can't live in the past. And so I think even like you talk about Americo, this is where live streaming becomes important, because now if you go live, whether it's showing what's going on behind the scenes, whether it's educating potential clients about what you do, now you're going to start to build that awareness, which is the know. They're going to start to like you, and then they're going to trust you, and then they're going to buy. You don't have to automatically feel like, oh, I got to get people to buy. It may not happen right away.
That's right.
And I think that's where people get too focused on, I guess the end result before building the path to get there. Or like we talk about, what's our plan? What's the execution to get us from point A to point B?
Where marketers,
and it may not be a straight line.
And marketers refer to that as your why. What is your why? And how do you build clarity around that, which you would probably call the mission, right?
So that's a great analogy.
Let's pick up on the customer avatar, because I want to demonstrate something to people who are listening. Who is your ideal client or business or industry? Do you work exclusively with veterans? Do you lean into the veteran community? Love to hear.
Not exclusively, but I would say obviously I'm always willing to have a conversation with veterans, but I would say for me, it's solopreneurs and small businesses that want to use video to get their message across and understand the importance of video in educating their potential customer to bring them in and grow business.
Yep.
And part of that is teaching them the tools to use, whether it's the microphones, whether it's the cameras, and also showing them how to be lean. I mean, we can literally go live today with nothing more than our smartphone, good internet, and a good microphone. That's all you need. You don't have to spend $10,000 to go live. And I think that overcoming that fear is what is important. And so even if you want to call it using my story, and till I started going live in 2018, I'm not somebody that had a camera and videoed myself all the time. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't know. Maybe you did, Americo, but that was a skill I had to get comfortable with. And the only way you do it is by doing the repetitions and just getting over it. And then now for me, I'm just as comfortable talking on video as I am talking in person.
Well, here's the interesting part of my narrative. I used to refer to myself as the keyboard warrior. And I used to take my narrative and my passion for that narrative and take it to the keyboard and post to my heart's content. And for whatever reason, my passion and my narrative didn't resonate as well as it could when I was writing things down. I think part of it had to do with the fact that I hate writing, and it almost felt like I was doing it just because everyone else was doing it, and it was missing the mark. So stepping away from that keyboard and bringing my audible presence, my visual presence, and my true identity to a live conversation, that's when people started to resonate and say, hey, I align with this message, this vibe, this energy. How can I be part of that energy? And people don't realize how the velocity behind going live, how it accelerates visibility, how it accelerates trust. And it doesn't have to be a pitch. It doesn't have to be a sales call, a sales conversation. These conversations that I host to demonstrate how easy it is to get comfortable during these conversations. Not once am I saying, buy from me. And that's why I bring Jay, because I fully respect his philosophy around storytelling and helping people realize that, hey, if you're going to do this, do it with the long game in mind. You're going to build the trust. You're going to build that social authority. And before you know it, you're going to have people knocking on your door or on your calendar and saying, I'd like to learn more.
Right.
Yeah, I think, just to jump in here, that it's not unlike telling a story, because you have to know your audience, right? Before you even engage your audience, you got to know who your audience is, right? Because you can't just go out there and engage the enemy. Like, okay, they don't like coming in packs at us, right? If you're on the battlefield, so they like it one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat, right? How do you handle that? Well, so the same is true for how do we go after the right avatar, right? Who is that audience member that we need to connect with? And as we go on and we do more of these lives, we get to gain a picture of that, right? And things like YouTube, things like Restream, they have analytics that we can go to and go, okay, this is our audience. These are the people who are engaging. We're getting more with the 30 to 60-year-olds, right? Who are gainfully employed, who have great jobs, and who are six-figure earners. But you have to start thinking about it even before you start engaging with those people. So who are they? But the more we do it, the more we're going to be able to refine who the audience member is. But I think some people get caught up in the who is it, right, before they even try to move forward. I've seen that a lot more lately, where they're so stuck with, well, I don't know who they are. Well, why don't we put out some information, see who reacts, who responds, and because we've got these analytics, we'll be able to really determine who the audience is, and then we can refine it. So sometimes, even if we maybe just have an inkling, not necessarily know who it is exactly, we can cast a wide net, grab the fish that we want, and then determine which fish we really want to eat at the table. So it's, don't get caught up. I think my message then in this moment is, don't get caught up in trying to figure out the audience member and then don't move forward with anything because you don't know exactly who it is. Sometimes you have to cast a wide net to be able to get the fish you want.
Well, Jay, I think you bring up a really great point, and that is that even things change, right? Like I said, when I first started, I was doing social media management. I was helping people, posting stuff to their Facebook pages or, to their Instagram or whatever. But as things evolved and I saw what I liked and didn't like, that shifted what I thought I could be more helpful with. Because I think, and it may be, America, why you like to do the live streaming stuff as well, is part of it is you want a challenge. You want something that you feel like, you get something beneficial, not only for you, but for the people that you're helping. And so, you also don't always have to say yes. That's another, for me, huge learning point as a business owner is just because somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd like you to do this, you don't have to say yes. You can say no, because you may find out that you're going to end up in a situation where you're not going to be happy because maybe instead of getting a client, you've just created yourself a full-time job. And that's not what I'm looking to do. Now, maybe other people are, but I think these are the things we have to think about. And it's okay to shift, in a sense, what you're targeting, right? You can move that rifle scope to the next target. It doesn't always have, you may find like, that's not my target anymore. I need to move over.
That is absolutely true. And sometimes you uncover it by accident. So when I transitioned from being in the corporate world and decided that I wanted to go down this route, my vision, my purpose was to solve the customer journey mapping, helping businesses uncover customer pain points. And what I found was that those who understood the language that I was using, they were just, nodding their heads and agreeing. It's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. But those who needed it the most, I may have been talking over their heads, complicating it, or articulating myself to the point where someone says, yeah, that's great, but who's got money to spend on that? I'm a solopreneur. I'm a small business. I can't spend that kind of money on big picture thinking. So I was talking myself out of many conversations. Now, my cross-functional experience can still be used, but this is where I zeroed in, where I felt, hey, here's an opportunity. I'm going to lean into live streaming events. It's top of funnel activity. It's capturing the community and the buyer at the top. How do we raise awareness, consideration, bring a consumer base, an audience, and a community to the conversation? How do we build trust at the top so that they want to come into that funnel and consider your product, your service? Let's focus. We can worry about the pain points after, but let's get them in at the top. Because if you don't have anyone entering your funnel, then what's really the point of mapping out a customer journey if you can't get your customers to start the journey? So, and the answer was built right in, because with intent, I branded my business as Journey Logic. It's about keeping it logical. And I myself found myself complicating it more than it needed to be. And we hear gurus and top voices and creators saying, stop overcomplicating it. And here we are. It's a simple solution that accelerates visibility. It earns trust faster than any other form of content. And there's the whole repurposing conversation. Listen, we can talk about this for hours, but I want to pause here and address the question that Keith is bringing up. Who are your allies? Who can help you fill those blind spots in your strategy? And I'll give you a moment to answer that. But before, I just want to add, because I touched on drawing on an example. You don't always, nor should you, ignore what you describe or define as your competitors. Your allies can be individuals, professionals, and businesses who are doing exactly what you're doing. Jim, you and I are in the same vertical. We're helping perhaps different customer personas, but we have the same or similar business model and solutions. But it doesn't mean that I turn my back or keep an eye open on what you're doing. We're allies. We should be here to support one another. And there's going to be advice that we can help one another with, and gaps that we might be able to support. We can be great referral partners. Like there's, I guess the message that I'm trying to get as part of this story is an ally can be someone who does what you're doing. And I know that on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who shun networking invitations. Oh my goodness, this person does the same thing I do. I want no part of this.
Well, and it's even things like like you said, you and I both do, remote live stream production. But what I say may not resonate with the same person that you talk to, and vice versa. So I'm not going to get mad if they say, well, I'm going to work with Americo, because first of all, to me, there's more business out there than any of us can handle. And so I don't look at people as competition. If anything, it's more about collaboration. I'm not going to go out there and try to steal people's business, because I just don't think that, morally and ethically, that's not how I was raised. I think that we do exactly what you said. We learn from each other. To your point, I could end up in a situation where, oh my gosh, I got to do a production and I'm not available. Americo, could you do it for me? Right. And vice versa. And but by getting to know each other and knowing how we can help each other, or hey, have you seen this new tool? What do you think of this? I mean, even as we've talked about with Keith on his his show. I mean, Substack to me has become like my new I don't know if I call it shiny object, but it's the thing that I'm very intrigued and interested with because it does allow you to go live there and it allows you to do repurposing with that live video that gets back to what you talk about, Americo, which is helping people understand what you are doing as a business.
Jay, any thoughts? Do you have questions?
Well, I think one of the things that I learned is that a couple of things, right? You have to look at the positive sides of things, and including competition. And so if you have to look at competition as a teacher, then do what works for you. For me, I err on the side of caution, because once you kind of look at a competitor with googly eyes, right, and or with rose-colored glasses, right? For me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but just for me, when I used to do stuff like that, like, okay, this competitor, he's just like me. I mean, we even wear the same shoes, for goodness sakes, right? So, I took him for granted, right? And so if we met up at, some meetings and we were kind of in the same space, we would be cordial, right? Maybe even more than cordial. We like, hey, did you catch the game last night? Stuff like that, and we'd really have a real good conversation, not just banter. But in the background, he's watching me more so than I'm watching him. And so I learned he was able to find out some things about me and used it against me. It wasn't anything bad, but used it against me in such a way that I didn't get the client. And so you just have to be careful and be cognizant of what is out there. Learn from what your competitor does and how you can capitalize on those things. Now, you don't have to be a snake in the grass, right, and do some sneaky, shady things in the background to try to gain the client over your competitor, but just be wary. Understand what they're doing, and if their story is compelling and drawing your audience, then maybe you have to adjust your story so that it can be just as compelling or more compelling. And I say this all the time, and America is probably tired of hearing it, but at the core of any communication, for me, I believe, is a really good story, right? Storytelling is key to every bit of communication that we do as human beings. And so if our competitor is telling a really good story to draw in the audience, then what are we doing with ours? What are we doing with ours? And so we have to change that up. I want to say something a little bit, in the beginning, what in legacy media, right? The marketing, right? It's funny because there's also guerrilla warfare, right? And that's where we get the name from. It's doing these tactics and things that are unconventional to be able to gain an advantage over the enemy or over the audience, or your competitors. And so now, though, through the advent of social media, through the advent of the internet and all the things behind streaming, so you two gentlemen, this is where it falls into, right? It's now just marketing. But I think, again, I'm going to go back to what it really is, and that's storytelling. Marketing is you telling a compelling story so that you gain the audience and the consumer or customer that you want and you deserve, and vice versa. They get the product and or the service they deserve. And the only way to do that is through the marriage of a story, theirs and yours.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's I mean, that's powerful. And I think to your point, right? When you have someone, in a sense, we'll call it exploit your weaknesses, right? It's right in with the military stuff we're talking about. Does that, upset you, or do you learn from it? And I think we have to think about how we carry ourselves, not only, personally, but professionally. I mean, even in this era we're currently in the United States and elsewhere, if you choose to, you want to call it, go on the political rails, you may get some new business, but you may also lose some business because you chose to allow your personal, thoughts to get out there in the public channels. And then again, you may also see people that you maybe wanted to do business with doing this very thing. And you're going to be like, you know what? I don't want to work with that person. So I think those are things we have to think about. I mean, even, what we share, all these things have an impact on how we're perceived by both our allies and our you want to call it our competition. And I tend to think more about collaboration versus competition because, like I said, the only way there's a competition is if you and I are going the same exact client, and we know that, because otherwise, if I'm not even sitting there like, oh, well, let me go see where Americo lives and let me start digging into all his social media to figure out who are the companies he's working with. I don't have time for that. There's too many other people out there that don't even know what live streaming is. In fact, what's funny is a couple of times recently, well, I would say the last 4 or 5 times I've spoken at events, I almost like have planted a question into my presentation, and it comes up early, and I'll be, how many of you have created a video for your business and it's less than 10% of the audience? So that tells me that, America, there's still lots of opportunity for you and I to grow our businesses because people still have not figured out that this is what they need to do. They're still kind of stuck in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing that I'm starting to recognize, and it's been staring me right in the face for years. Marketing, like you go on TikTok, you go on Instagram and Facebook, which are notorious for it, and we're starting to see it make its way into LinkedIn, what people perceive as marketing. You jump into Canva, you jump into a template that aligns with your brand colors, and you're putting out messages that look and feel vanilla compared to what everyone else is putting out. And to Jay's point, we talk about storytelling, and what better way than to repurpose stories and to repurpose engagement that comes from a live stream event. Like the opportunities to repurpose content and create content that complements your value proposition. There's no better way. And, maybe I'm kind of being a little favorable because this is what I do. But I see this as an opportunity to bring storytelling, social selling together, but most importantly, the social proof that comes from these events. Yes, there are metrics that we can all follow in different formats and different styles of content. But when I put the analytics from a live stream up against traditional short form content and any other content, live streams is further ahead. And other creators aren't talking about live streaming to the degree that we are. They actually talk it down as being an inferior option. It's because, and this is my opinion, it's because it's not what they're doing. It's not their niche. It's not their value proposition. Everyone's got to prop up their own value proposition. And I'm here to advocate live streaming as being a very, very viable solution that complements business strategy, marketing strategy, and a whole bunch of other strategies. Like if you want to turn a live stream into a sales presentation, by all means, live selling is a thing. You can do live demos and engage with your customer base and answer questions in real time and gain and convert that way if that's part of your strategy. Imagine companies that advocate for, the culture that they're trying to build around employees and trying to build for their customers. Hey, you can have a live stream that emulates what surveys have been doing for years. Bring your customers, have some form of customer appreciation, have them join your conversation. We used to conduct focus groups years ago. Nobody talks about focus groups anymore. But what better way to demonstrate authenticity and accountability than to bring your brand, bring your message to the live stage. And when customers, community, audience, call it what you want, when they show up and see how you're engaging in an unrehearsed conversation, how you respond in the event that you're put in a vulnerable position, that's going to earn you trust, opposed to a polished, overproduced ad that is perfect. I'm going to step off my soapbox here for a second.
Hey, you know what? Let me talk. Let me talk a little bit about focus groups. And for a little bit, those were cuss words at one point, because people thought at one time that focus groups steered people or the company in a focused direction. I wonder why. But what they were thinking was kind of askew, right? That you only had a certain amount of people directing the company in a way that would impact thousands, if not millions of people. So is it the right, and it was like, what's the formula? How many people, what stratus, are they from? Do we need, somebody from Beverly Hills versus somebody from, Dothan, Alabama, right? Who do we look at to be able to steer who our audience is? But, focus groups can now be done in such a way, and I'm going to go to something that America does that I stopped doing a while ago, and that's doing these surveys. When you get these surveys out there, this will allow you not only to engage your audience, right, but to also help shape your company, your story, whatever it is, right? So you're able to see in real time what your audience is thinking. And so it's important. I'm not necessarily a fan of focus groups now, but I see the reasoning behind why it's important that you look at some of the data that comes from them. I think though that in this day and age where we do have, the analytics and you have these surveys, those surveys, Americo, I think are much more powerful than a focus group, because what you're doing is you're putting it out there and you're drawing in all these different dynamics of people in all types of stratas, right? You're not just, trying to determine who is the right person to be a part of this focus group, because then what you're doing is you're only going to be mirroring the people that you already think is the right group for you, rather than letting the market determine it. So you have to be very careful with that. And I'm not saying it's not the right thing to do. But I think that there's ways now, due to technology, that we're able to figure things out. The other part is, man, I let the platforms do it. Like there's an algorithm now, right? Every platform has this algorithm, and if we're not on that algorithm, well, guess what? The audience isn't going to come. How many times do you hear people say, man, I never got that, I never got that notice, I never got the notice for the event, right? And the reason we're not getting that is because the algorithm, we're not plugged into that algorithm. And how do we get there? Well, you got to look at your analytics. You got to look at the numbers, and then that's how you kind of formulate where to go from there. But I think there's ways. I'm not saying don't look at focus groups, but there's other ways that we can do it where the technology does it for us, and we don't even have to worry too much about it. We just got to look at the numbers. So, go ahead.
So
Sorry.
here's my thought on technology. Listen, I respect the advancements that we've made and how the advancements have simplified and made us more efficient and more effective in bringing things to market. But on that same storyline, technology has also made us very synthetic. And you're right. You can get better information with the support of technology, but that information is easily manipulated, where having a live conversation, yes, there's pros and cons. I'm not going to disagree. But there's still that opportunity of keeping that human element and keeping that human touch. And I believe wholeheartedly that this is a great way of doing it. You can, through the live stream experience, you can embed the questions and have analytics. Like there's so many plugin tech solutions that I've tested. I've actually tried to get some of them to guest speak, but I haven't heard back from some of them. But hey, there's many ways of doing it, and essentially, I think what we're trying to get at is that not all solutions are the right solution for everyone. But I also want to advocate and shine a light that this is a viable option. All right. Jim, you were going to say something before I interrupted.
Oh, no. I think you're right on target.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I'll say this, is so the live stream stuff, and let me put it to the audience this way. As a poet, right, I used to do poetry slams, and that's like poetry reciting competitions. And when you're in front of a live audience, right, there's one thing to write things down and be that keyboard warrior, right, and to get like, the messages or the emails later, like, oh man, that sucked, that really you were way off in what you were saying. So when you're on stage, and you hear a boo in the crowd, live feedback, that'll tell you exactly what your audience is thinking, right? They will tell you. And so, but for me, right, so as the person who is reciting the poetry, with especially one with a message, right, if one person comes to you at the end of the show and says, hey man, I really resonate with what you were saying, I really align with the message that you shared, then what you've done is you've done your job as a poet, as a storyteller, right, as a marketer, right. It's reaching the person that it was meant to be for, right? That entire thing, that operation that you just underwent, is to do just that, to draw that audience member in. And so how do you capitalize on the next show? Well, if this resonated with the one person, well, maybe I need to focus more on what it was that I said that drew that person in. And maybe now I can grow it to 2, and then the next to 3, and maybe even 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 20, right? Going forward every other time, make it exponential. But that live interaction, man, that's extremely important. When you get the feedback that you do, and I'm going to give some flowers to Americo here. When it's over, it's not over, right? Team replay, Americo's really good about this. He'll go back in and he'll start interacting with people and messaging the people who messaged during the live show. So it doesn't end there. So there's a lot of ways that we can really connect with our audience even after the live stream. And so one of the things that's important to understand is virtual reality is green. It's evergreen. That's what they call it here in the digital world, right? It's evergreen. It lasts forever, right? Things on the internet can be there forever. And so, that ice challenge you did 5 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever it was, you're going to be seen doing that ice challenge all the time. So tailor your story and see what the feedback is, and that one person in the crowd, whether it be live or whether it be in the replay, capitalize on that and see how we can get the next person to do that same thing.
That's right. Replays live on forever, and so does your legacy. We're building a legacy here, right? And you refer to legacy frequently, Jay. And let me tell you, this has been a fantastic conversation. Hard to believe when I'm asked, so how long do your live streams go? And when I say an hour, some of my guests are astonished that we can talk for so long. But here we are. And I've been part of some of Keith's rooms that go on for 4 or 5 hours. Now, I want to be mindful and respectful of people's time. Jim, do you have time for 1 or 2 more questions?
Sure.
All right. Jay, you good for time?
I'm good. I'm really good.
All right. So we talk about repurposing. Let's take a step back and revisit repurposing once again, because Jim, you and I introduced each other on this very subject. We met on stage. We shared the stage on Keith's live stream. And the focus of conversation, or the topic at that time, was repurposing. And you gave us a master class, or what I would refer to master class quality instructions and conversation around Substack. When it comes to restreaming, do you help, or how do you help, if you do, your clients repurpose their productions, their live streams?
So one thing we'll do is, say, for an example, I've got a podcast live stream that I help produce, and so we make sure it gets out on YouTube. We make sure that we also provide the files to the guest, so that the guest can then take those files and, you know, repurpose them. Now, the team actually takes the raw video and will cut them up. I don't always have to do that. But I've also done stuff where, like, one of the beauties is, like we talked about with Substack, is you can go into Substack and repurpose your video right within the Substack app. You know, it'll allow you to create clips. And so that's where AI can be your friend, because it can find things that it might take you a lot longer to find yourself. And so then it's just a matter of deciding, where do I want to put this? Because I think you have to remember that, as an example, you've got this show, you're going to complete this episode, you start thinking about the next show. But there are people that weren't able to join us live, may not even know that we exist. But by playing a clip of something that we may feel is valuable, like, oh, that really resonated with me, I'd like to hear more. And that's where I think, and I know I was guilty of it early on, is not thinking about that as well. About, you know, kind of that, oh, we got to get our next show out. But it's like, no, you've got this library of content. And I bet you that if you've done enough of this stuff, you could go in and probably write a book just off of all the things you've talked about.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that many of us underestimate the quality of content that can be repurposed, whether it's driven by live events or not. The opportunities, whether it is comments from audience engagement, like what we can do here, to your point, shorts. We may be talking for an hour, and I think, in all honesty, it's safe to say that we know that not everyone is going to listen to the full hour. But that's okay. It's just like live television or the radio. When you get in the car, you're going to tune in when you're able to. You're going to stick around for as long as you're willing to. And if it resonates, and I see this time and time again, when I compare total views to unique views, people are coming back, whether it's to listen to that segment that they heard or to pick up where they left off. And to your point, Jim, if you chop it up into 30, 60, 90-second clips, you're going to capture a different audience member, community member who consumes content in shorter bite-sized pieces. Oh, where has Jim been in all my life?
Right.
Like, how have I not heard about Jim, right?
Yep.
But that happens through the magic of repurposing.
Absolutely.
Right? Into Substack for that exact reason. Yes, we might talk about live streams, and we may enjoy live streams and having these conversations, but when I take my transcript and create a blog summarizing what happened, I'm now meeting my community members who consume content through the written word. I'm meeting them in Substack. And if they like what they read, and listening and capturing the conversation on replay. And that is fascinating. And I'm so excited that even though it's been around since 2017, I'm so excited that I'm now building that community on Substack, because it is very, very powerful.
Definitely.
So that's a free plug for Substack.
Yes.
All right. So for someone listening today or listening to the replay and wants to lead with more clarity, what's the first step and advice that you would give them for them to do that?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. And I think sometimes you have to understand the personality of the person that is looking for that. And, you know, it's easy to say, oh, well, just be a leader. But what if you've never led? What if you've never been put into a position where you understand what leadership is? So I would say the first step is find people, you know, it could even be people like, you know, Simon Sinek, that resonate with you and learn from them and start to figure out what is it that I want to provide out in the world? What is it that I want people to come to me for? What is my superpower? I think that's kind of the first step. What is it? Because it's like, oh, I want to help people, because how many people have we seen, Americo, that before they were, they were the Facebook expert, then they became crypto experts. Now they're TikTok experts. Now they're always jumping to the next thing. But what is it that they really were ever good at? We don't know. And it becomes hard for us to figure out how are we going to help that person find clarity when it's not even clear to us what it is that they want. So if you want to lead with more clarity, what is it that you are passionate about and want to move forward with? And it's not always going to be the thing that makes the most money. And I think you have to get that out of the way, because I feel like if you do what you're passionate about and that you feel is going to help others grow, the rest will follow. And I think even our friend Keith talks about that. Keith doesn't do these things for the money. He does it because he enjoys it. He does it because he wants to connect with people. And I think that's I would say that's part of how you got to do it.
Question dedicated just for you. So you get your own question this week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
How can business owners and entrepreneurs use storytelling to differentiate themselves in a crowded digital space?
Oh, wow. Well, here's the thing. There's so many things that can go into responding to that, but I'll give you a prime example, and it's an example I've used multiple times. If I mentioned the name of the person, you could probably mention the company they're associated with. So if I said what company comes to mind? Right? If I said,
well, we say Apple, right?
Right. So if I said, Elon Musk, what company would come to mind? There's a couple of them, but my point is your story, right? Even your personal story as the founder can have a profound impact on your business. Don't be afraid to differentiate yourself by sharing your story with the world. I think that's the most important thing that I could impart to our audience is don't be afraid to tell your story. Now, you don't have to be so personal about it. You can be personable. And I used to tell this to my call center teams. You don't have to be personal or get personal about your story, but you can be personable, right? Oh, I know how that feels to be in a storm. I was in a literal storm that demolished my home. I was in a tornado. So I know what it's like to struggle, right? So right there, that example, just sharing that little bit of the story can show others, hey, he knows what I'm going through. And if you can identify your specific pain point, right? Those are where the businesses thrive. That's how a business gets started. You see a pain point and you tackle it, and that becomes your product, your service, right? The founder of Nike, he was a runner. He didn't like the shoes that were out there, so he created his own brand, his own shoe. So when you're out there, what is the pain point that started your business? Share that pain point with others, and they're going to go, man, I know that pain. I live it every day. I'm a runner. I used to do marathons all the time. I don't do it anymore because my feet are so jacked up. So these are the things I think that you should consider. Don't be afraid to tell your personal story. You can be personable when you do it and appeal to people, understand their pain points, and then you'll understand the audience and they'll understand you.
That's powerful. I think, right?
Fantastic.
I know
That
I've
is-
struggled with
that
this. Is we don't always think that our story is that big of a deal and that nobody's going to care about it, when the reality is your story, if it helps one person, it's accomplished what it needed to do.
What a great way to cap off a great conversation. All right. So for those in the audience with questions, if you're not connected with Jim, I strongly suggest reaching out and give him a follow. I'll let him share where he can be found. But if you also felt today that warrants a share, feel free to share one of the key takeaways from today's conversation with your community, whether through a repost, whether through listen to today's episode. Jim, we're going to wrap things up. I want to thank you, but also give you the opportunity to share with our listeners. Where can people get a hold of you?
Well, LinkedIn is obviously a great, easy place, and just Jim Fuhs is the best way to find me. And then I would say Substack is probably I'd probably say it's number one, but I know most people are on LinkedIn and maybe not on Substack yet. But go to jimfuhs.substack.com. Love to connect with people over there. And then I'm also on a show called Dealcasters on Amazon, and we also have some YouTube channels. And so if you go to dealcasters.live or dealcasters.shop, you'll be able to connect with us and see how we're teaching people about how to overcome their fear of the gear.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Jay, how can people get a hold of you?
You can actually, same with me, you can go to LinkedIn. I'm there. You can even look for the storytelling strategist. But also, I do have a website, ruleyourstory.com. And it'll show you what I do. And it'll talk a little bit about my book. You can actually purchase my book there as well. I'm also going to have an AI platform that's going to use my book to help people tell their story. So in the near future, look for that on the website. The platform is going to be there. And if you want to, you can actually use that platform to be able to help tell your story. And then I've got another website that's going to be out there, and it's outriggerventures.com. And that's going to be to be able to help small businesses like us. So be on the lookout for that as well. But thank you so much, Mirko, again. And Jim, again, always good to learn who people are who come on the show and what they do. And you did not disappoint, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. This was great. Really appreciate it.
Thing off, but feel free, continue to engage. I'll be jumping in the comments to respond to the activity that has been going on. If I missed any questions throughout I will jump in and respond. So for now, thank you everyone for watching, for listening. I will be dropping a blog summary article summarizing today's conversation with my community members who prefer to read what happened. So stay on the lookout for that. In the meantime, we will call it wherever it is that you may find yourself. For some, it's morning. Others are winding down. Let's bid everyone a great rest of your day, wherever it is that you find yourself. Bye for now.